Liam believed abandoning me at the restaurant on my 30th birthday was his escape route to a life of luxury. He sneered at my lack of ambition, tossing the bill onto the table as a final insult. He had no idea that the woman he just discarded was not a liability, but the secret architect holding the blueprints to his entire existence. When he walked out that door, he did not just leave a fiancé, he declared war on an empire. My name is Vivian Cross, and I was currently watching 5 years of my life dissolve into the bottom of a crystal water glass. The gilded cage was exactly the kind of restaurant Liam loved. It was loud, aggressively expensive, and entirely lacking in soul. Gold leaf covered the walls and the air smelled of truffles and desperation. It was my 30th birthday. I sat across from Liam Sterling, the man I had shared a bed with for half a decade, waiting for a small velvet box or perhaps a simple card. Instead, I received a lecture on personal branding. Liam swirled his wine, refusing to meet my eyes. "Vivian, look, this is hard for me," he started, his voice practiced and smooth, like he was rehearsing for a board meeting. "But hitting 30, it is a milestone. It made me realize that we are just on different trajectories. I need to focus on my growth. I need to be surrounded by people who challenge me." I sat perfectly still, my hands folded on the white tablecloth. "Are you saying I do not challenge you?" "Liam." He sighed, running a hand through his carefully gelled hair. "It is not that. It is just that you are so safe. You are content being a freelance interior designer, picking out curtains for suburban homes. That is fine for you, really. But I have a vision. I am destined for the C-suite. I need a partner who understands the cutthroat world of high-stakes real estate. Someone with ambition. You just lack that fire." The irony was so sharp it almost cut my tongue. Liam was a mid-level manager who had not closed a significant deal in 6 months. He talked about skyscrapers while I actually built them. But to him and to the world, I was just Vivian, the quiet girl who worked from home. He had no idea that the modest freelance gig was a cover. Before I could respond, the sound of aggressive heels clicking against the marble floor interrupted us. A woman appeared at our table. She was wearing a dress that cost more than Liam's car and looked terrible on her. This was Isabella. She was the daughter of a real estate mogul. Or at least, that was the story she sold to gullible men like Liam. Liam. "Baby, are we ready to go?" Isabella chirped, snapping her gum. She looked down at me with a sneer that was more pity than malice. "Oh, is this the little designer you told me about cute? Very domestic." Liam stood up immediately, adjusting his suit jacket. He looked relieved to be leaving. He looked down at the table where the bill for our dinner sat in its leather folder. He did not reach for his wallet. Instead, he slid the folder toward me. "I think you should get this." "Viv," Liam said, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "Consider it a lesson in independence. You need to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet if you ever want to make it in this city. Goodbye, Vivian." I watched them walk away. Isabella clung to his arm, whispering something that made him laugh, a hollow, sycophantic sound that grated on my nerves. The waiter approached the table, looking at me with undisguised pity. He expected tears. He expected a scene. He expected a broken woman devastated by a public rejection on her birthday. He did not know who he was looking at. I did not cry. My pulse remained steady. I watched Liam exit the restaurant with the cold, detached gaze of a predator analyzing prey. I was not just an interior designer. I was V.C., the phantom CEO of the Atlas Group. I owned the firm that designed the very skyline Liam worshipped. I held the patents on the sustainable materials his dream projects relied on. I had spent 5 years playing the role of the supportive, simple partner because I wanted to be loved for myself, not my net worth. Liam had just failed that test in the most spectacular way possible. I opened the leather folder. The bill was nearly $600. I reached into my purse, bypassing the cash I usually used to maintain my cover, and pulled out a heavy, black titanium card. It was the kind of card that did not have a limit, the kind that was invitation only. I slipped it under the linen napkin so the logo was obscured, handing it to the waiter. "Put it through," I said softly, "and keep the change." As the waiter walked away, I took a sip of my water. The cool liquid washed away the last remnants of Vivian the girlfriend. In her place, the architect was waking up. He wants ambition, I thought, staring at the empty chair where Liam had sat. I will show him exactly what ambition looks like. The private elevator whisked me up to the 92nd floor in absolute silence. As the doors slid open, I stepped into the cool, climate-controlled air of my penthouse. This was my true sanctuary, a stark contrast to the cramped, drafty apartment in Queens I had pretended to share with Liam for 3 years. That rental smelled of stale coffee and unfulfilled promises. This place smelled of white tea and absolute power. I kicked off my modest heels and walked barefoot across the Italian marble floor, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. Every light in the city felt like a reminder of the empire I had built while Liam was busy complaining about his commute. I had created the persona of Vivian, the freelance designer, for one reason only. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not for the 9-figure trust fund or the conglomerate I helmed. I wanted a partner who would build with me, not someone who just wanted to move into the castle I had already constructed. Liam had failed that test with flying colors. I pulled my encrypted phone from my clutch. It was 2 a.m, but in my world, the sun never set on business. I dialed my chief of staff, Ms. Cross Marcus answered on the first ring, his voice thick with sleep but instantly alert. "Is everything all right? Everything is finally clear." "Marcus," I said, my voice steady. "Activate Project Phoenix Rising. I want the acquisition finalized immediately. But, ma'am, the board voted to delay that until next quarter," Marcus stammered. "And the Thorn Manor deal?" "We are still negotiating the zoning." "I am done negotiating," I cut in. "Buy the zoning board if you have to. I want Thorn Manor under the Atlas Group umbrella by noon today." And Marcus burned the press release about the anonymous buyer. Put my name on it. My full name, Thorn Manor. The irony was delicious. It was a sprawling, historic estate on the outskirts of the city, a place Liam spoke of with reverence because his grandfather had worked there as a butler decades ago. Liam had always dreamed of managing a property like that, of being the master of the house. Now, I was going to turn it into my global headquarters. For the next 2 weeks, I did not sleep. I shed the skin of the meek girlfriend and fully inhabited the role of the architect. I walked into the boardroom wearing vintage Chanel and 6-inch stilettos, my hair slicked back, my makeup sharp enough to draw blood. The beige cardigans and sensible skirts were incinerated. I reviewed the portfolios. My reach extended far beyond design. I owned majority shares in the steel refineries that built the city's skeletons. I controlled the shipping logistics for the luxury stone market. When developers in this city wanted to break ground, they had to kiss my ring first. I buried my heartbreak under mountains of contracts and acquisition forms. Every time I felt a twinge of pain from Liam's betrayal. I raised the rent on one of my commercial properties or acquired a competitor. The industry noticed. They started whispering when I entered restaurants. They called me the Iron Lady of real estate. Men who had previously dismissed me as a pretty face now scrambled to stand when I entered the room. One afternoon, while I was approving the demolition plans for the east wing of Thorn Manor, Marcus slid a tablet onto my desk. "I thought you might want to see this," he said quietly. On the screen was a paparazzi photo taken in Monaco. It showed Liam and Isabella on a yacht, holding glasses of champagne. They looked tan, happy, and wealthy. "They look like they are having fun," Marcus noted. "They are spending money they do not have," I replied, swiping to the next tab which showed a credit report my team had legally obtained. Isabella is leveraging her father's name to open lines of credit, but her father cut her off 6 months ago. And Liam is maxing out cards that will hit their limit in 3 days. I handed the tablet back to Marcus. Let them enjoy the sun, I said, turning back to the blueprints of the empire that would soon crush them. Winter is coming. 6 months is a lifetime in the real estate market, but it was apparently just enough time for Liam to ruin his entire life. He crawled back to American soil not as the conquering hero he had imagined, but as a cautionary tale wearing a wrinkled linen suit. The rumors reached my desk before his plane even touched down at JFK. Isabella had not just left him, she had eviscerated him. She had maxed out his credit cards on designer handbags and 5-star hotels before disappearing into the Mediterranean night with a Swiss banker. Liam returned to Manhattan with a credit score in the double digits and a reputation so toxic that even his old gym membership had been revoked. He found his key card to our old apartment deactivated. His landlord had already leased the place to a nice couple with a golden retriever, desperate and drowning in debt collectors. Liam began scouring the job boards. That was when he saw it. The V Group was hiring a project manager for the Thorne Manor restoration. The salary listed was $250,000 a year. It was a trap coated in honey, and Liam walked right into it. I was sitting in my office at the top of the Atlas Tower when my head of human resources, Sarah, placed a resume on my glass desk. She did not need to say a word. I looked down at the paper. Liam had listed his 6 months of debauchery in Europe as international lifestyle consultant and networking liaison. "Do you want me to shred it, Ms. Cross?" Sarah asked, her hand hovering over the document. I picked up the resume, tracing the embossed font Liam had likely paid his last $20 to print. "No," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Bring him in. I want to see if he still knows how to tie a tie." "You cannot be serious," Sarah replied, her eyebrows raising. "He is..." Unqualified is an understatement. The man listed wine tasting as a soft skill. "Bring him in." "Sarah," I commanded, turning my chair to face the window. "But I will not be the one interviewing him. Let Johnson handle it. And tell Johnson to turn up the heat." 2 days later, Liam walked into the conference room on the 4th floor. He had no idea that 40 floors above him, I was watching every twitch of his face on a high-definition monitor. He sat across from Johnson, my most ruthless project lead. Liam looked thinner, his tan fading into a sallow gray, but his arrogance remained remarkably intact. "So, Mr. Sterling," Johnson began, flipping through the resume with visible disdain. "It says here you have experience managing high-value assets. Can you elaborate on your knowledge of historical preservation zoning laws?" Liam loosened his tie, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. "Well, zoning is really more of a suggestion, isn't it? I find that if you have the right handshake, the laws tend to bend. I am a big picture guy. You see, I delegate the boring legal stuff." I laughed softly in my office. He was trying to charm a man who ate concrete for breakfast. Johnson stared at him, unblinking. "We deal with load-bearing masonry here, Mr. Sterling, not handshakes. If a wall collapses, people die. Do you know how to calculate the stress load of a Victorian-era retaining wall?" Liam shifted in his seat, his confidence cracking like cheap plaster. I am a quick learner, and I have vision. That is what you need for a place like Thorne Manor. Someone with taste?" Johnson made a show of scribbling something on his notepad. He let the silence stretch for a full minute, watching Liam squirm. "We do have a position open," Johnson finally said, closing the folder. "It is vital to the daily operations of the site. You would be the assistant site supervisor. You would report directly to the senior management team and ensure the flow of essential resources." Liam's eyes lit up. He heard supervisor and management. He did not hear the rest. "I will take it," Liam nearly shouted, leaning across the table. You won't regret this. I am ready to lead. Excellent, Johnson said, standing up and refusing Liam's outstretched hand. You start Monday at 6 in the morning. Do not be late. I switched off the monitor. Liam had no idea that the essential resources he would be managing were coffee orders, and his supervision would be ensuring the porta potties were accessible for the construction crew. He thought he had landed a stepping stone to the penthouse. In reality, he had just signed up to be the janitor of his own humiliation. Thorne Manor was currently a symphony of destruction and rebirth. The air was thick with the dust of centuries being swept away to make room for a 6-star resort that would redefine luxury in New York. I walked through the main atrium wearing a white hard hat and oversized aviator sunglasses that covered half my face. I was there to inspect the structural reinforcements of the grand staircase. But what I found was a comedy act in an orange safety vest. Liam stood near the mixing trucks. Holding a clipboard he clearly did not know how to read. He was shouting at a foreman who looked ready to bury him in wet cement. When Liam turned and saw me, his expression shifted from panic to a smug, oily recognition. He adjusted his plastic helmet and strutted over, dodging a wheelbarrow with the grace of a startled chicken. He evidently assumed that, like him, I was merely a cog in this massive machine, perhaps a low-level secretary or a junior designer hired to pick out paint swatches. Vivian Liam exclaimed, looking me up and down with a pitying smile. I must say, I am surprised. I did not think you had it in you to land a job at a place like this, although I suppose they need plenty of bodies to handle the paperwork. I adjusted my sunglasses, hiding the amusement in my eyes. I am just trying to keep busy. Liam, I said, keeping my voice neutral. It is a big project. He nodded sagely, placing a hand on my shoulder as if he were bestowing a blessing. I am glad to see it. Honestly, I was worried about you after I had to cut you loose. But look at you now. Maybe that breakup was exactly the motivation you needed to finally get out of your comfort zone. You are welcome. I forced a tight smile. Yes, I am certainly learning a lot about management. Liam puffed out his chest. Well, stick with me and you might actually climb the ladder. I have already made quite an impression on the upper management. The mysterious board of directors. I hear they are already looking at my reports. I could put in a good word for you. Maybe get you a 5% raise if you keep your head down. That would be generous of you. I replied, It is no problem. We are professionals now. Right? In fact, why don't you be a dear and grab me a coffee black? 2 sugars. I have a very important meeting with the site supervisor in 10 minutes. He waved his hand dismissively, turning his back to me to bark at a confused electrician. I did not move. Instead, I caught the eye of my personal assistant, who was hovering inconspicuously by a pillar holding a tray of lattes intended for the architects. I gave a subtle nod. The assistant rushed forward and shoved a cup into Liam's hand. Liam turned back, seeing the coffee, and smirked at me, assuming I had scurried off to fetch it. Good girl, he said, taking a sip. See, you are learning already. I walked away before I laughed in his face. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to the head contractor. Make sure Mr. Sterling handles the septic tank inspection personally today. It seems to be the only thing that matches his skill set. 10 minutes later, I watched from the mezzanine as the foreman handed Liam a pair of rubber boots and pointed toward the muddy, foul-smelling excavation pit in the south garden. Liam looked horrified, but he marched off, terrified of looking incompetent. My entertainment was interrupted by a screeching voice echoing from the entrance. Liam. Darling, where is the director? I looked down to see Margaret, Liam's mother, storming through the construction barriers like she owned the deed to the property. She was wearing a fur coat that had seen better decades and was waving a handbag at a security guard who was trying to stop her. My son runs this place, she shrieked. Let me through. She spotted Liam emerging from the mud, looking miserable. Her face lit up, and she rushed over, ignoring the grime. Then she saw me standing near a pile of marble slabs, her expression instantly soured, as if she had stepped in something unpleasant. "Vivian," she scoffed, marching over to where I stood. "Good Lord, do you have no shame? Following my son all the way here, I told Liam that you were obsessed. But this is pathetic even for you. I hope you are not distracting him. He is a very important man now, and he does not need his past dragging him down." "Hello?" "Margaret," I said calmly. "I am just doing my job." "Well, do it somewhere else," she snapped, brushing dust off her sleeve. "Liam is going to be the CEO of this resort one day. You are just background noise." She turned her back on me to fuss over Liam's muddy shoes. I watched them, the mother and son who thought they were royalty in a kingdom I had built with my bare hands. "Background noise," I whispered to myself, turning to walk back to my office. "Enjoy the silence while it lasts. Margaret, the storm is about to get very loud." The dusty air of the construction site lobby seemed to recoil from Margaret's perfume, a cloying scent that smelled of roses and entitlement. I stood behind a pillar, adjusting my hard hat, listening to her berate the receptionist before turning her venom on me. To her, I was just a stain on the floor plan, an ex-girlfriend desperate for scraps of her son's newfound glory. "She is absolutely shameless, Liam," Margaret hissed, glaring in my direction. "I told you she would not let go, following you to your workplace. It is stalking, plain and simple. You need to be careful. A woman like that. She will try to claim she helped you when you reach the top." Liam smoothed the lapels of his cheap suit, puffing out his chest like a peacock in a parking lot. "Do not worry, Mother," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that echoed loudly in the cavernous hall. "She is insignificant. In fact, the board has been hinting at a restructuring. The current project lead is incompetent. They need a visionary. I expect to be named executive director before the grand opening." "I will be the one cutting the ribbon," Margaret gasped, clutching his arm with manic glee. "Oh, my brilliant boy, I knew it. But you must be careful. That girl, Vivian, she is working here now. If she messes up, it reflects on you because of your history. You need to get to the chairman. Tell him she is a liability. Get her fired before she ruins your reputation. I am already on it." Liam smirked. "I have a plan that will secure my position and show everyone exactly how useless she is." The plan was almost insultingly simple. Later that afternoon, I left a folder on a desk in the shared workspace, clearly labeled, "Confidential, do not open." Inside were preliminary sketches for the lobby design sketches that I had rejected 3 months ago because they were structurally unsound and aesthetically hideous. I watched via the security feed as Liam waited for the room to clear. He crept toward the desk, looking over his shoulder, and snapped photos of the documents. The next morning, a proposal for structural innovation landed in my inbox, submitted by Liam Sterling. He had copied the rejected designs word for word, claiming them as his own brilliant insight into cost-saving measures. He accused the current design team me of wasting budget on unnecessary materials. I sat in my office, reading his report. It was a suicide note written in corporate jargon. "He is suggesting we remove the load-bearing columns in the atrium to improve the feng shui," Marcus said, standing beside me, trying not to laugh. "If we followed his plan, the roof would collapse within 20 minutes. "Let him believe he is a genius," I replied, deleting the report but keeping a copy for the legal team. It is time to set the stage. I drafted an email. It was sent from an anonymous board liaison account directly to Liam. The subject line read, "Exclusive Invitation Owners Gala, Guest of Honor." The body of the email praised his bold initiative and visionary leadership potential. It invited him to the grand opening gala, hinting strongly that this would be the night his promotion was announced. We requested he bring his family to witness his ascent. Liam took the bait with terrifying speed. Within 2 hours, my credit monitoring alerts pinged. Liam had applied for a new high-risk credit card with an interest rate of 29%. He went straight to a bespoke tailor on Fifth Avenue. I saw the receipt. He spent $4,500 on a tuxedo. He bought a gown for his mother that cost another $2,000. He was spending money he would never earn, banking on a salary that existed only in his delusions. He called Margaret immediately. I could almost hear her shrieking with joy on the other end of the line. "I told you!" "Mom," Liam shouted into his phone in the break room, not caring who heard him. They recognized my talent. "I am the guest of honor. Yes. Yes. Invite Aunt Carol. Invite everyone. I want them all to see me take the throne. Vivian. Ha, she will be lucky if they let her scrub the toilets that night." I watched him on the monitor, preening in the reflection of the vending machine. He was inviting an audience to his own execution. I leaned back in my chair, a cold smile touching my lips. "Bring everyone, Liam," I whispered. "The more witnesses, the better." Thorne Manor had been transformed from a construction site into a palace of light and shadows. The air inside the grand ballroom smelled of white orchids and money. It was the kind of scent that was engineered, not grown. Crystal chandeliers, each weighing over 500 pounds, dripped light onto the shoulders of Manhattan's elite. A string quartet played softly in the corner, their music weaving through the murmur of 700 guests. I stood in the darkened control room overlooking the floor, watching the screens that captured every angle of the night. At 8 o'clock sharp, Liam arrived. He walked through the main mahogany doors with the swagger of a man who believed he owned the very ground beneath his feet. He was wearing the tuxedo he had bought on credit, the fabric shimmering under the lights. On his arm was Margaret, draped in a sequined gown that was trying far too hard to be elegant. Behind them trailed a small entourage of aunts and cousins who looked around with wide, greedy eyes. I watched on the monitor as Liam snapped his fingers at a passing waiter. "Champagne," Liam barked, not even looking at the young man. "And make sure it is the good stuff. I am the guest of honor tonight. If my glass is empty, you are fired." The waiter, who was actually a graduate student I had personally hired, nodded stiffly and hurried away. Liam turned to a group of investors standing nearby. I recognized them. They were sharks who smelled blood in the water. But tonight, Liam thought they were his peers. Yes, the restoration was grueling. I heard Liam say through the microphone planted in the floral arrangement, but I told the team that we needed to respect the history. I made the call to import the marble from Italy myself. It cost a fortune, but, well, quality is my trademark. He was taking credit for stone I had selected 3 years ago. I decided it was time to join the party. I left the control room and slipped into the ballroom through a side entrance, positioning myself in the shadows near the bar. I was not wearing my uniform. I was wearing a simple black dress that blended into the darkness. Liam spotted me almost immediately. His eyes narrowed, and he excused himself from his family, marching over to me with aggressive purpose. He cornered me against a velvet-covered wall, checking over his shoulder to ensure no one important was watching. "Vivian," he hissed, his face flushing with anger. "What are you doing here? I thought I told you to stay out of sight. You are going to ruin my image. People here, they are high caliber. They do not want to see the help loitering around the top-shelf liquor." I swirled the sparkling water in my glass, looking him in the eye. "I am just observing, Liam," I said calmly. "It is a big night." He leaned in closer, his breath smelling of expensive alcohol and nervousness. "Look, I know you are jealous. I know it hurts to see me succeed like this while you are still whatever you are, but do not embarrass me tonight. It is best you should go hide in the kitchen until the speeches are over. If I see you near the stage, I will have security throw you out." I smiled, and for the first time, I let a fraction of the predator show. "You should enjoy that glass of wine." "Liam, I said softly. It costs more than your entire month of salary used to. Sip it slowly. The aftertaste can be quite bitter. He blinked, confused by my tone, but before he could respond, a heavy hand landed on his shoulder. It was Arthur Sterling, no relation to Liam, but one of the biggest angel investors in the city. Liam spun around, his face transforming instantly into a mask of sycophantic joy. "Mr. Sterling," Liam exclaimed, extending his hand. "So glad you could make it to my big night. I was just telling my assistant here about the challenges of the vaulted ceiling." Arthur looked right through Liam. He did not take the outstretched hand. Instead, his gaze lingered on me for a split second, a flicker of recognition and respect in his eyes, before he turned and walked away without saying a word. Liam stood there, his hand hanging in the air. He turned back to me, his face red. He probably did not see me. Liam stammered. "The lights are very bright." Suddenly, the music swelled, the lights dimmed, focusing on the main stage at the front of the room. A podium stood waiting. Liam straightened his tie. He looked at me one last time with a sneer. "That is my cue," he said. "Watch and learn, Vivian. This is what a winner looks like." He walked away from me, striding toward the stage before anyone had even announced a name. The arrogance radiating off him was almost palpable. He climbed the stairs, bypassing the host who was approaching from the side. Liam walked right up to the microphone, grabbing it with both hands. He looked out at the sea of faces, his mother beaming from the front row. He opened his mouth to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice booming, "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate my—" A sharp click echoed. The sound system died instantly. The room went silent. Liam tapped the microphone. Nothing. He tapped it harder, a look of panic starting to crack his composure. He stood there, alone in the spotlight, moving his mouth. But the only sound was the humiliating silence of 1,000 people watching a man shout into a dead void. The silence in the ballroom was not broken by applause. It was shattered by the shrill, demanding ring of a cell phone amplified by the acoustics of the vaulted ceiling. Liam, standing on the stage with a dead microphone, patted his pocket frantically. He should have silenced it. A professional would have silenced it. But Liam was not a professional. He was a man drowning in a sea of his own making, and the water was rising fast. He pulled the phone out, his face pale under the harsh spotlight. I knew exactly who was calling. It was the frantic automated system of the National Bank, followed immediately by a human collections agent. I had timed the liquidity freeze to execute exactly 3 minutes ago. In the front row, Margaret let out a strangled cry. She was staring at her own phone, her jaw unhinged in horror. She scrambled up the stairs to the stage, disregarding all social etiquette, and grabbed her son's arm. "Liam!" she shrieked, her voice carrying over the confused murmurs of the crowd. "My house. I just got an alert. They say the mortgage has been called in. They say the property is under seizure by a holding company. You told me you paid the bridge loan." Liam looked at her, sweat beading on his forehead. "Mom, calm down. It is a glitch. The banking app is down. I will fix it. I just need to speak to the finance department." He looked out at the audience, forcing a terrifyingly fake smile. "Apologies, everyone. Technical difficulties." "Please, enjoy the hors d'oeuvres. I will be back to finish my speech in a moment." He practically dragged his mother off the stage, stumbling down the side steps. He did not head for the exit. He headed for the secured corridor that led to the VIP lounge. He believed that was where the HR director and the board members were holding court. He thought he could charm his way out of bankruptcy. I watched on the monitor as he sprinted down the hallway, his tuxedo jacket flapping open. He reached the heavy oak doors of the VIP sector, where Stone, my head of security, stood like a statue carved from granite. "Let me in," Liam yelled, trying to push past the guard. "I am the guest of honor. I need to speak to the board immediately. There has been a terrible mistake with my payroll." Stone did not budge. He simply crossed his massive arms. "I am the main character of this night," Liam screamed, his voice cracking, spit flying from his lips. "Do you know who I am? I am the future CEO. Move aside, or I will have you fired so fast your head will spin." I pressed the talk button on my walkie-talkie. "Let him in, Stone," I commanded calmly. "I want him to see the final stage." Stone stepped aside instantly. Liam, looking shocked but vindicated, straightened his tie and smoothed his hair. He grabbed Margaret's hand and pushed the doors open. Inside, the room was silent. Around a long, polished mahogany table sat the 12 most powerful figures in New York real estate. These were the titans who owned the skyline, men and women who could crash a market with a single text message. They held crystal tumblers of scotch and stared at the door. Liam froze. The air in the room was heavy with judgment. He had expected a party. He walked into a tribunal. Yet, his delusion was a powerful drug. He cleared his throat, stepping forward with a trembling smile. "Gentlemen, ladies," Liam announced, his voice shaking. "So glad to finally meet the brains of the operation. I apologize for the interruption. Minor technical glitch out there. But I wanted to personally assure you that under my leadership, Thorn Manor will see returns of at least 20% in the first quarter." No one smiled. No one offered him a seat. They looked at him as if he were a cockroach that had crawled across a Michelin star dinner. A man at the end of the table stood up. It was not a board member. It was Mr. Henderson, the chief legal counsel for the Atlas Group. He held a thick manila folder in his hand. He did not look at Liam. He looked through him. "Mr. Sterling," Henderson said, his voice dry and sharp as paper. Yes, legal." Liam nodded vigorously. "We can discuss the contracts later, but right now I have a small issue with my bank that I need the company to verify." Henderson threw the folder onto the table. It slid across the mahogany surface and stopped right in front of Liam. Photographs spilled out. Photos of Liam photographing the confidential blueprints. Photos of him sleeping in the site office. Logs of his internet history searching for how to fake a structural report. "You are not here to negotiate." "Mr. Sterling," Henderson said, "you are here to be processed. You are fired, effective immediately, for gross negligence, corporate espionage, and violation of Section 4 of your non-disclosure agreement, and regarding your mother's house. The holding company that bought your debt is a subsidiary of ours. We do not renegotiate with thieves." Liam looked at the scattering of photographs on the table as if they were written in a foreign language. The silence in the VIP room was heavy, suffocating, and broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. He blinked rapidly, his brain unable to process the sudden shift from guest of honor to trespasser. He looked up at Henderson, his face twisting into a mask of desperate arrogance. "Fired." Liam laughed, a high-pitched sound that bordered on hysteria. "You cannot fire me. That is absurd. I am the only one who understands this project. The design, the vision. It is all in my head. If you let me go, Thorn Manor will fall apart within a week. I am the keystone." Henderson did not blink. He simply pressed a button on a small remote control concealed in his palm. The mahogany panel on the far wall slid back to reveal a massive 80-inch screen. It flickered to life. Video footage filled the room. It was a montage, a greatest hits collection of Liam's incompetence. There was Liam sleeping in his office chair with his feet up on the desk at 10 in the morning. There was Liam handing off his safety inspection forms to an intern. Then, the audio kicked in. It was a recording from the break room. "The board is just a bunch of senile dinosaurs." Liam's voice boomed from the speakers, crisp and clear. "I am just milking this cash cow until I can take over. The real work, I just make up the numbers." Nobody checks anyway. The color drained from Liam's face until he looked like a wax figure left out in the sun. Margaret lunged forward, slamming her hands on the table, rattling the crystal glasses. "This is a conspiracy," she screamed, her eyes bulging. "These are deep fakes. You doctored this. You are all just jealous of my son's talent. You want to steal his glory because you know he is better than all of you combined." Henderson ignored her outburst entirely. He turned a page in the file. "And regarding the debt," the lawyer continued, his tone as cold as liquid nitrogen, "your family home was leveraged against a high-risk loan. The term expired at midnight. The new creditor has decided not to extend the grace period. Eviction proceedings will begin at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning." Liam grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. His knees were buckling. "Creditor," he stammered, sweat dripping down his nose. "Which creditor?" This is illegal. I will talk to the chairman." "Yes, the chairman. He likes me. He knows my worth. Where is he? I demand to speak to the person in charge right now," as if on cue. The lights in the VIP room and, indeed, the entire ballroom beyond the open doors suddenly died. Darkness swallowed the room. The terrified murmurs of the guests outside drifted in. Liam froze, his mouth half open. Then, a single beam of light cut through the blackness. It was a spotlight, sharp and blinding, focused intensely on the top of the grand spiral staircase that descended into the main hall. The heavy double doors at the top of the stairs slowly swung open. A voice echoed over the loudspeakers, booming with authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, please direct your attention to the staircase. It is my distinct honor to introduce the chairman and founder of the Atlas Group, and the sole owner of Thorn Manor, Ms. Vivian Cross." Liam stopped breathing. Beside him, Margaret looked as if she had been struck by lightning. Time seemed to suspend itself in the room. I stepped into the light. Gone was the beige cardigan. Gone was the sensible ponytail. Gone was the girl who apologized for taking up space. I stood at the top of the stairs wearing a custom burgundy gown that hugged every curve, the fabric shimmering like liquid rubies. The bodice was encrusted with diamonds that caught the spotlight and scattered fire across the room. My hair cascaded down my back in perfect waves, and my lips were painted a deep, blood red. I looked down at the world I had built. And then, I locked eyes with the man who had tried to break me. I did not smile. I did not wave. I simply stood there, radiating the kind of power that does not need to raise its voice. I was the architect, and I had finally come to inspect the wreckage. The silence stretched tight as a piano wire. I took the first step down the spiral staircase. My heels clicked against the stone, a rhythmic countdown to Liam's destruction. The crowd of 700 guests parted effortlessly. They were sharks, but they recognized a leviathan when they saw one. I walked through the corridor of people, my gaze fixed solely on the man who had left me with a bill and a broken heart 6 months ago. He was trembling. It was a visceral, physical shaking that rattled the ice in the glass he was still clutching. "Vivian," Liam whispered, his voice cracking under the weight of the reality crashing down on him. You are the chairman, but you are just..." I stopped inches from him. I could smell the fear on him. It smelled like cheap cologne and sweat. Just what? "Liam." I cut him off, my voice projecting clearly without a microphone. "Just the girl who was too safe for you. The woman who lacked ambition. Is this enough ambition for you? Or should I buy another city block?" Margaret, realizing the ship was sinking, decided to throw her son overboard to save herself. She stepped forward, smoothing her sequined dress, and plastered a terrifyingly fake smile across her face. "Oh, Vivian, darling," she exclaimed, reaching out as if to hug me. "I knew it. I always told Liam you were destined for greatness." I said to him, "Liam, she is too smart for you. He is just, well, You know how he is. A bit foolish. But we are family. Right, I did not flinch. I simply raised a single hand, palm out. She froze. Stop the performance. Margaret, I said coldly. The curtain has fallen. There is no applause coming. Liam dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor, but he did not notice. He looked at me, and then, in a display of supreme narcissism, he fell to his knees. He grabbed the hem of my burgundy gown with his sweaty hands. "Vivian, please," he begged, tears streaming down his face. I was wrong. I was so stupid. It was Isabella. She twisted my mind. She made me do it. But I know why you did all this. He looked up at me, a spark of delusional hope returning to his eyes. You did this for us, didn't you? He asked, his voice thick with desperation. To prove yourself to me, to show me you were worthy of my vision. We can rule this place together. Babe, you and me, just like you wanted. The room went deadly silent. The audacity took my breath away for a split second. He still believed he was the sun around which my world orbited. I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound that did not reach my eyes. You truly are pathetic, I said, looking down at him. I did not build this empire to impress you. Liam, I built it because I am the architect. I did this for me. You are not a player in this game. You are not even a pawn. You are just a speck of dust that accidentally flew into my eye while I was looking at the future. I pulled my dress from his grip and turned to the stunned audience. I pointed a manicured finger at the man kneeling in the shards of glass. This man, I announced, my voice ringing through the hall, attempted to defraud the Atlas Group. He falsified safety reports, attempted to steal intellectual property, and leveraged his family's assets to fund a lifestyle he could not afford. He is a fraud. The whisper started low, like the buzzing of insects, and grew into a roar. I saw the investors who had shaken Liam's hand earlier wiping their palms on their jackets. I saw the socialites covering their mouths, their eyes darting between Liam's sobbing form and my stone-cold expression. He was stripped bare. His ego, his reputation, and his future were lying in pieces on the floor, and everyone he had ever wanted to impress was watching him bleed. The realization that his life was over did not make Liam humble. It made him feral. The shock on his face curdled into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the shards of glass slicing into his knees, and lunged toward me with a guttural scream that echoed off the vaulted ceilings. "You tricked me," he roared, his eyes wide and bloodshot. You set me up. You ruined everything because you are a bitter, vindictive witch. He never reached me. Before his fingers could even graze the silk of my gown, Stone moved. My head of security, a man who moved with the terrifying speed of a striking viper, intercepted Liam in mid-air. There was a sickening thud as Stone slammed Liam face first onto the cold Italian marble floor. He twisted Liam's arm behind his back, pinning him down with effortless brutality. Margaret shrieked, clutching her pearls. "Get off him! He is the director! He is trespassing," I said, my voice cutting through her hysteria. I walked over to where Liam lay pinned, his cheek pressed against the stone, gasping for air. I crouched down, my burgundy dress pooling around me like blood. I leaned in close, so close that only he could hear the final nail being driven into the coffin of his ego. "The birthday gift you gave me was freedom," I whispered, my voice soft but deadly. "The gift I am giving you back is the truth. You were never a player in this chess game. Liam, you were just a sacrificial pawn." I stood up and signaled to the security team, "Get them out of my building!" Stone hauled Liam to his feet. 2 other guards grabbed Margaret, who was kicking and screaming about lawsuits and indignity. They did not walk them to the exit. They dragged them. The guests parted like the Red Sea, watching in silent fascination as the mother and son were unceremoniously marched to the grand entrance. The heavy oak doors swung open. Outside, a torrential downpour had started, a cold, miserable rain that washed away the grime of the city. The guards threw them out onto the wet pavement. Liam stumbled and fell into a puddle, his tuxedo ruined, his dignity shattered. Margaret slipped in the mud beside him. The doors slammed shut with a finality that shook the floorboards. I turned back to the room. 700 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. I walked to the microphone. The silence, absolute. I did not apologize. I did not explain. I simply smiled. Tonight is not about the past, I said, my voice strong and unwavering. It is about the future. Project Phoenix Rising is not just a building. It is a testament to resilience. It is proof that when a woman builds her own castle, she does not need a prince to save her. She only needs the will to rule. The applause started slowly, then erupted into a thunderous ovation. The elite of Manhattan were not cheering for kindness, they were cheering for power, and I had just shown them who held the crown. Hours later, as the party wound down, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the iron gates of the estate. I held a glass of vintage champagne, the bubbles rising in a golden stream. Outside, in the cold rain, a lone figure was banging on the locked gates. It was Liam. He was soaked to the bone. Shouting words the wind stole away, begging to be let back in. He looked small, insignificant. I took a sip of the champagne. It tasted like victory. I turned my back on the window, leaving him in the cold where he belonged. My heels clicked rhythmically on the floor as I walked back toward the warmth and the light. In the months that followed, Liam Sterling became a pariah. His name was blacklisted by every major firm in the tri-state area. His family lost their home and was forced to move into a cramped rental in a neighborhood he used to mock. He spent his days dodging debt collectors and his nights reliving the moment the lights went out. I, however, continued to rise. The Atlas Group expanded into Europe and Asia. Thorne Manor became the crown jewel of the East Coast. They called me the Iron Architect, the woman who turned heartbreak into a billion-dollar empire. I never looked back. I had built my world brick by brick, and in my kingdom, there was no room for traitors. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please leave a comment down below, telling me where you are listening from. I would love to hear your thoughts and connect with you all. Don't forget to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and smash that hype button so this story can reach even more people.